Hello and welcome to VAX-NATION podcast by the PSVI. I'm your host, Dahlia Harris. On VAX-NATION podcast, we tackle all things vaccines and vaccination and provide information so the private sector workforce can get vaccinated at the earliest opportunity they get. Today, it's all about the J&J. It's the Johnson & Johnson Janssen COVID-19 vaccine. And we get only facts from our resident Oxford University trained immunologist, Dr. Ramon Arscott. So what are we going to be talking about today on the episode? Well, we're going to be looking at the makeup trial and efficacy of the J&J vaccine. Why only one jab? Am I protected opposed to getting two? And any other popular concerns that are out there about blood clotting. Dr. Arscott is going to handle them all. And so I'm so happy to welcome him once again. Hey, Dr. Arscott.
How are you doing, Dahlia? Thanks again for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Before we get into it, I want to recap, if you may, a little bit about the COVID-19 vaccine and just help us to understand once more how it works.
Great. All right. Well, thanks again. I'll always refer all the listeners to the YouTube or videos where I've discussed this more at length. But to give you a few key points, remember your immune system's an army. Remember they got four main members: a general, a detective, a sniper, shoot to kill, and a gun and a policeman with handcuffs. And the handcuffs is what we call antibodies. If you hear antibodies, it's just handcuffs. What you need to remember is that a detective is always looking for anything that's not you, because when they're created, they learn what's you. And when they see something that's not you, i.e. an intruder, like a virus, it then takes it back to the rest of the army and say, we need to learn this guy and create a special force. If him ever show up again, the police can cuff him and the sniper can shoot him. And the problem was that it takes 2 weeks to learn any intruder. So the dangerous ones can hurt you and kill you in those 2 weeks before you can create that special force. So once you know that, you understand that a vaccine is just trying to give your immune system a heads up. Learn the intruder so that you have that force ready. Mm-hmm. Now, last recap was they used to give you, I talk about the intruder as a gunman, they used to give you the whole gunman without the gun and say, learn him. That was measles, mumps, rubella. That's not the COVID vaccine. What they did, they said, let's make it safer. We're not going to give you the gunman, we're just going to give you a bit of his clothing, the hat. This is the only virus, the only gunman that wears a green hat. We call that the spike protein. This is just the hat, not the virus, just a little bit of protein. Once you know that, you realize it's safe. You're not getting the virus, you're just getting a little piece of protein. And then say, learn the hat. If anybody show up with this green hat, shoot him, cuff him and shoot him. You got your 2 weeks card and then ready. So now you know what that is. What is J&J? Why is it different from Pfizer and Moderna?
Yes, it's been such a point of comparison and debate, a little bit more than the others, and I'm not sure why. Why is that so?
Well, a couple reasons why. One, they talk about why is it one shot versus two? Well, you need to realize that in all these studies, they look to see how many handcuffs you created, how many police that create handcuffs specific for this intruder. They measure it. The measure is called GMT, geometric mean titer. But they measure, see how you create enough handcuffs, and they measure how many snipers, what we call CD8 killer T cells. Did you create enough snipers? Did you create a big enough SWAT team? When the first guys did it, Pfizer and Moderna, they did it with 2 shots. Johnson & Johnson did their trial a little bit after them and said, okay, in the phase 1 and phase 2 trials, we're going to test 1 versus 2 shots. And they realized with 1 shot, you created enough handcuffs. You created enough snipers. So they say, okay, we can do it with 1 shot. Second thing, them say, well, why is people worry about J&J? Them say efficacy is lower. You can't measure whether, this one's 94 and that one's 66 because they measure it differently, right? One tests everybody, the other one just tests people who are sick. What you realize that all of them prevent disease and death. They may not prevent you from getting infected, you know. That means the gunman broke in. You test positive, but you don't get sick. Why? Because you have the police to handcuff him and shoot him. So you can't multiply. And if you can't multiply, remember, the other thing that the gunmen do, the other thing that the viruses do, they like to change. Every time they multiply, they change. And we call those changes variants. Now, I'll go into what are variants. Why them talk about the UK and the South African and the Brazilian and now the Delta or the Indian variant? There are millions of variants out there, but they only mention these ones because the hat is changing in those. Yeah. And that is a concern. Why? Because our forces are looking for something with a green hat. Suppose the hat turn purple, that means nobody's protected. But the hat don't change from green. It might be a green turban or a green baseball cap, but it's still green. So the vaccines are still working. Mm-hmm. But the hat is changing. And what we're worried is that if it changed too much, we're going back to square one a year ago. That is why they talk about those.
So tell me a little bit, because you mentioned it, the variants, and I think for most of us, we're curious about just how do viruses work? Why are there different variants when we keep hearing them all over the place and being named? How does it work?
Well, when they get in, all they want to do is multiply. But all viruses, when they multiply, they change a little bit. And it's random changes. Sometimes they change and they become weaker and the virus dies out. Sometimes they change and just change them jackets so they're the same, right? Some of them change and pick up a bigger gun so they're more deadly. Some of them change and they start changing the hat. The reason why we gave it a hat and not the rest of the virus is because we know that Corona can't change the hat too much because he uses the hat to break inside your house. Mm-hmm. So if he change it too much, he's gone. And so the hat is a good target, but it's starting to change a little bit. That is why when it's becoming more transmissible because the hat is a little bit more efficient. So that is what a variant is. It's just the natural cycle of a virus changing. So now you have multiple gunmen out there that are a little different. I'll give you this quick point. If you're vaccinated, you have your police with the handcuffs and the sniper, so he might break in, but you cuff him and shoot him. If you're not vaccinated, you've made yourself the vessel in which this thing could multiply and change. You've made yourself the vessel where you could potentially create a more dangerous Jamaican variant. So you've now potentially created a bigger problem. So when you say not just doing it for you, doing it for the world, don't be the person in which you've created a new monster.
Yeah.
That is the key.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that people have worked out is, listen, the one jab must be better than two. Because I can just get it one time and it works one time. Some of it's fair, you know, I don't want to be vaccinated. And so if I only have to do it one time versus doing it twice, then I'm good. Does it really matter?
Right now, it doesn't matter if you're following the guidelines. What we know is that Johnson & Johnson measured how many handcuffs you get, how many snipers you get with the one jab, and them say is enough. Moderna, Pfizer, all them say, well, you know what, I need to give you it twice for you to have enough.
Yeah.
It prevents you from getting sick and dying, right? So they're going to follow those protocols. Now they're starting to mix them. They realize that, whoa, I can give you AstraZeneca first and you can get Pfizer second, and them say, hold on, I get a bigger army. You get more protection, right? Yeah. So they're starting to mix. They haven't mixed with the Johnson & Johnson yet, so I can't talk about that. But they're starting to mix them and say, right, okay, I gave him this form of the green hat, now I'm going to give him that green hat. And them say, okay, now we know it could come in with a lime green hat or an army green hat. It's still a green hat. And we know we're looking for both of those variants. So that is where we are.
Yeah. And how it works. I want to go back again to talking about blood clotting, because I think one of the things that raised the level of concern was there was even a temporary halt by the U.S. administration, and so people feel like if you have to halt it temporarily, it is a grave concern and a valid one. So could you at least, I guess, alleviate some of the concerns that we have?
All right, thanks. That's a great question. I'm gonna give you a few points. One, just to the point where I said they start to mix them. Angela Merkel in Germany, she got the AstraZeneca first. Her second shot was from Moderna. Why? It was right around the same time they said, hold on, AstraZeneca causing clots. So she said, all right, I'm gonna take the next one. Okay? And she realized that she was fine. In fact, she created a big army. So that talks about the mixing and where that came from. However, let's talk about the clots specifically. They took a while to determine whether the vaccines were causing clots. Why? Because we knew that the virus causes clots. So there's like, hold on, did this person get the vaccine, i.e. the hat, then go catch COVID afterwards? And is the COVID causing it? All right, when they say, okay, maybe the vaccine might be causing it, they say, hold on. At 28 people out of 8.7 million who got the Johnson & Johnson got a clot. That is about 3 or 4 per million. In COVID, when they catch the virus, is 1 in 12 might get a clot in the lung. 1 in 9 might get a clot in the leg. And if you get sick enough to end up in the ICU, 1 in 4, 23% of people got a clot if they caught the virus. Not 1 in a 250,000 or 4 in a million. They're not even in the same ballpark. So if you're taking a chance on, I'll catch the virus or I'll take the vaccine, it's not even a comparison. I'll give you one more. If you take the oral contraceptive pill for contraception, you have a 1 in 1,000 chance of getting a clot. And they're not telling the FDA to pull the pill off the market. So please alleviate your fears on that. And if you did get a clot, we know how to treat it.
I think, and even the last point is extremely critical. Even if you did, we know how to treat it, so people can be a little bit more comfortable in their mind about getting vaccinated. It's just really important, Doc, for people to go out and protect themselves. That's really what we're saying.
And prevent the formation of the Jamaican variant. Stop this thing from multiplying and changing and making a more dangerous virus, one that we're not protected against. And the only way to do that is to have the security forces. And if you have a security force, it can't multiply, it can't change.
Thank you so much, Doc. Always a pleasure talking to you, Dr. Ramon Arscott, and for giving us the facts of the VAX matters. All right, so listen, guys, you heard it all. Efficacy is important. But what's more important is that all vaccines are 100% effective in preventing severe illness and hospitalization. The J&J is one jab, one and done. That's how we say it in Jamaica. And remember, every day vaccines are being used to save lives in Jamaica. Vaccines work with the vaccine. Yes? Thank you again, Doc, and we'll talk soon.
Good seeing you. Thanks for having me.
In the hospitality industry, interaction with a lot of people is the day-to-day activity. You have staff that you interact with as well as visitors. And right now, the industry is just building back, and it is therefore very important that as many people in the industry as possible get vaccinated.
This is the VAX-NATION podcast, brought to you by the Private Sector Vaccine Initiative, the PSVI. The PSVI is a mechanism set up to help support the implementation of the National Vaccine Plan of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. This is where we leave you this week on VAX-NATION podcast. VAX-NATION podcast. We tackle all things vaccines and vaccination and provide information so the private sector workforce can get vaccinated at the earliest opportunity that they get. For more VAX facts and for resources to share with your work teams, please visit PSVIJA.com. Again, PSVIJA.com. Here's a reminder to make sure you only follow the guidance from trusted, credible sources of information about the virus and the vaccines. And one of those sources is the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Talk with the healthcare providers as well and plan to take the vaccine at the first opportunity you get. Until next time, I'm Dahlia Harris. I leave you with a reminder from our resident immunologist, Dr. Ramon Arscott. See you next time.
Remember, your immune system's an army. Remember, they got 4 main members: a general, a detective, a sniper, shoot to kill, and a gun and a policeman with handcuffs. And the handcuffs is what we call antibodies. If you hear antibodies, it's just handcuffs. What you need to remember is that detective is always looking for anything that's not you, because when they're created, they learn what's you. And when they see something that's not you, i.e. an intruder, like a virus, it then takes it back to the rest of the army and say, we need to learn this guy and create a special force. If him ever show up again, the police can cuff him and the sniper can shoot him.